Well, first of all, our driver Bernardo, okay, Bernardo, and our guide, our expert guide here, this is Isidro. So that's great to be in his company again. So let's all have a fascinating morning discovering some more history and culture, to architecture from the Canary Islands. Thank you.
In the hills where it is, it's got nearby the Mercedes forest, sort of rain forest, the humidity, the water, and the valley in which the city actually used to be a lake in the past. So the control of the water of that lake and the control of the passing one side to the other made obviously La Laguna an important sort of place, so much so that the capital of the island was founded there. Originally it was the former capital of Tenerife. It's flat. Most of La Laguna nowadays occupies the place that the old lake used to. So it's nice and flat, there's no hills and so on, it's a comfortable place to walk. And the intention is to arrive in La Laguna, arrive by the marketplace. Nearby we got the chapel of what used to be the Franciscans convent, where we got the Christ of La Laguna, the perhaps most important religious sort of symbol. And we'll stop there with the intention of giving you a bit of free time to allow you to pay a little visit to the chapel and see the Christ of La Laguna and some of the silver work around it. The market with its smells and its colors and its peculiarities. There's toilets in there, which I recommend obviously that before we settle off your visit, there's a person that constantly goes through those toilets every sort of 10-15 minutes, you know, with a mop and so on, keeping it nice and clean, so in that aspect is alright. And we'll leave you about half an hour free in the area to investigate. Then we'll organize the group and we settled off. We understand that obviously you're perfectly capable of walking. I mean, it's not a marathon, it's not a race. We're not in a hurry, you're on holiday, and that will be in mind. As I usually say, the rhythm of a group is usually put by the slowest person. If you're in Europe, there's an expression that they use in many countries in Europe, and it's that all the roads lead to Rome. In the Canary Islands, such thing doesn't work. In the island of Tenerife, all the roads lead to La Laguna, to the lake. There was two places in this island, the National Park of Teide and the Lake of La Laguna, which the local population, cleverly enough, decided that, you know, to avoid the conflict over the ownership of such a precious places and therefore the constant fights in order to get the possession of those places, they decided to just simply, you know, do the typical trick of making it sacred. Si salimos antes, salimos por allá, por eso te dije, pensaba hacerlo de una forma diferente, vamos a ver el tiempo que tenemos. La idea era cambiando porque hemos tenido bastante tiempo para hacer la máquina. Sí, hemos hecho la parte de regreso de Canary.
Con agua, con manguera y todo, y ya es lo que le da por reír. Y después
closes it up.
We both try and give people apples. Because that's the problem. Once them start to produce. Oh yes. Apples everywhere.
Right, just a little halt in here for a second. Before we get, obviously I still got to get across to the older, to the more historical part of the city. This is the extension of La Laguna into the new terrains of the lake, as from 1830s onwards. The new constructions, but resembling a bit the old architecture. No? Observe the windows, such windows. You find them a lot in Britain, you find them in the British colonies, you find them in London, and in fact, already in a couple of local books, I found out the interpretation that they got such windows, English windows. I mean, your relationship with Portugal has been so long that calling them English windows is nicking something that belongs to the Portuguese and making it yours. According to a good architecture, and I mean he's a catedrat and he's an authority on that, such windows are Portuguese creation which Britain adopted perfectly well. And you can find in the Canary Islands perfectly. Most of our older houses have got them. So we've already got an influence there that we want to obviously talk about. This together with the actual balcony, because the balconies used to have windows as well, as they still do in Portugal. We'll get round to a little story there. So let's just be up to that. These tremendous big pine forests, large big samples, various centuries, 1,000, 2,000 years of age. Trees that you cut down, when they fall, you make sure that you get basically down to the earth. You open them up and you get that sort of inside part of it. Very rich in resin, tremendously red and hard as the wood used in construction. I mean, that one has been painted, although I can see the resin coming out on some of the knots. I stopped here because this particular plank on the lower side, that if you observe, it's got a tremendous amount of resin coming out. You get wood back to 1600s, cut out from the heart of a Canarian pine, put it on a balcony, at a door and a window, and nowadays it's still on the north, the resin coming out. The resin is so acid that it wouldn't allow any crawling creature to get inside there. Mind you, nothing catches fire better. So you've got to be careful with that. But as we get into the next patio and see something else, we'll keep on talking about the wood. Come with me before the other group comes in.
But it's a declining hobby nowadays. That is a nice abbey.
Not a nail, not a screw into it. As you can see, there's bits of the same sort of wood inside there, and they go on forever. We're coming to this patio here. As you see, there's a long tendency to old houses have a step on every door, so mind the step in here and mind the step in there. Move this way.
¿Cuánto? Vale.
Británico.
Ok.
Right, the house in which we enter nowadays is the History and Anthropology Museum of Tenerife here in Laguna. It was actually the property of a captain, Italian from Genoa, Giustiniani was his name, and then another officer, also captain, also Italian, actually married his daughter. And the name is Lercaro. Lercaro is the name of the house nowadays. The architecture is not that sort of influence of Canary and such windows and the rest of it. This is Italian. You can actually see at the end of those little pillars the masks, the figure at the top, they're characteristically Roman, and the windows obviously open up in the most typical standards in there. Most of our construction is of wood, and most of our pillars, therefore, this is what I wanted to tell you about. The size of the tree that this was into was possibly something like that. The 1/3, the inner third of the thickness of the tree is the actual part. This part here, so you get rid of the outside wood, which is whiter and a lot weaker and not so rich in resin. You therefore opened up basically the tree. A nice big tree, so you carved out and then you have made it pieces like this, or these large pillars. They were varnishing this a couple of weeks ago. There's already drops of resin starting to come out of the knots in there. And it's been like that since 1730s. And it will keep on like that for a while. Canarian pine is a tree that lives in a volcanic land, and therefore fire is the most normal phenomenon that they have to live with. Canarian pine has adapted perfectly well to live with fire up to the point of building up all that resin inside, that when the heat of a fire gets close to it, the resin goes out to the surface in such a quantity that it's like if you were really throwing buckets of it from the top. Once a tree gets completely impregnated by this resin, like a form of transpiration, when the fire comes, it's got something to burn, but it's the resin that the tree is offering, not the wood. So you get a torch, is what the trees stand up into real torches. There's a tremendous fire going on, but the trees are not burning. The wood is actually intact. You get rid of the 1/4 of an inch of the exterior where the blackness is, and the rest of the tree is alive. So 3-4 months later, the tree starts going green and lovely again, and life continues. I mean, it's not the only one. A place that burns every year and the trees still recuperate year after year is Australia with the eucalyptus. It's exactly the same story with their oil. No? So in the aspect of a forest, Canarian pine trees regenerate. Once you cut their wood, obviously that is a different story. Nothing burns quicker and easier than a Canarian old house if you're not careful. And in fact, a bit further on, we'll see a lovely old mansion that was turned into the Bishop's Inn of Tenerife, and that caught fire in 2006. So we continue with that story. On the arch, just right there, past behind these glasses here, you've got a representation of the old Roman classic sort of paintings. Obviously a bit more modern in the aspect that you've got some fruits that in the days of Rome didn't exist. After the discovery of America, we discovered them as well. But you find paintings like that in some of the old Roman buildings, but mainly in areas like Pompeii and so on, and some of the buildings that they recuperated. It's painted all black. And well, like the only Italian have it, they prefer the stone pillars to the wooden one. And this is a remain of those motifs with different fruits and with lots of vines and so on them. It's a typical painting that you would find in some of the old Roman palaces. In this case, as obviously there are some more modern. Right, they got the museum on the top. To get to the museum, normally people pay an entrance, but in our case it's just a visit to the patio with the museum. Say hello to the friends. Right, back to the street. Mind the 2 steps. On the top, and that sort of elements of decoration on stone on the front of the building is characteristically Italian. So obviously this one doesn't fit into our pattern of colonial Canarian architecture. The colonial Canarian architecture's got a tremendous influence of Portugal. Although the conquest was done by Spain, the labor that Spaniards actually employed in the Canary Islands for the building of their house was mainly Portuguese. 800 years of internal wars in Spain make one thing clear. They had lots of soldiers, but no carpenters, no builders and things like that. They ran out of a particular type of working class. So in this case, obviously, now we're going there where we got those red tend to go that way as well, and there's a story connecting both buildings, the cathedral and this one. When the fire took place, obviously inside there, a great deal of the building was really damaged. They managed to get the doors out of the hinges and get some of the wood recuperated. But I mean, the one that is on top of us is Monterey pine from California, so it's most of the work across there. And some of the bits of balconies, windows and so on, they in fact were taken off. I mean, it's a critic, but it's correct. There's some lovely old houses in La Laguna that were waiting for the opportunity of being recuperated to the city because they were in a bad state, but there was no economy to do that. Then all of a sudden, because of the importance of this building, they go and clean out from those houses all the wood they can get. Houses that will never be able to recuperate in order to put it on this place and here, but it wasn't sufficient, so they have to import a great deal of this Californian pine, which honestly speaking, to me, it just simply loses its reason of being, it loses completely its importance. If you look at the color of the stone, it's grey, it's been here aging away, even if it's been kept nice and clean, the same as the front. But if you look at the pillars at the bottom, they're a lot lighter. So that is something that fire can do, mainly Canarian pine. It's so rich in resin that actually intensifies that fire in such a way that even the basalt ends up overheating and shattering up in pieces, actually exploding when it takes place. Everyone in this island knows, or should know, at least the people with my age know that perfectly well, that you don't make a campfire anywhere with any type of stone. You need a rugged, porous one, the one that absorbs the heat, maintains it. In fact, we used to make ovens and things like that out of it. You make a fire inside, then you move it to the side, and just with the remnant heat, you can get your bread and other things inside there. If you get down to the beaches or the bottom of the ravines and you got these cobblestones completely lovely and flat and shiny, don't put that next to a fire, because if a fire gets a few hundred degrees, the explosion will shatter it in pieces, and it can be quite serious. It can harm you. No? Right, continue along. Thin tall one, that one across there is obviously a better example. In the front of the cathedral they got some tremendous one. They are Eucharias from the island of Norfolk in the South Seas, not far from New Zealand, Australia, and this elegant dragon tree, typical of this island of mine. Those lovely balconies, obviously remember, conventual constructions, discreet, with that sort of little wooden cellosi, as they call it, in order to be able to look out discreetly. Come in, the patio is open, and it's worthwhile a little walk around. Mind the step. That's fine. We got a few students visiting today. find universities in the mainland of Spain and in areas like Britain and so on, already going back a few centuries ago. Education at that level in the islands arrived rather late. We were already in the middle of 1800s. And in this case, we've got a professor local who's gone to Cadiz in Spain, and actually at the University of San Fernando in Cadiz. He educates, he retires, he comes back home, and the privileged sons of a few rich families of La Laguna, they start receiving private classes in his own home. Becomes a bit more popular, so he actually takes a building close to where he lives and he continues with those classes. But I mean, obviously that is starting to have the project is getting bigger and more serious. So after this convent, as a convent was actually closed, it turned up into the first educational center of La Laguna at university level. In fact, also within its promises, they conditioned a few spaces there to start putting together for the first time ever in the history of this island the mummies, the bits of pottery and the things that they've been finding here there. So it's the first sign of a future archaeological museum in Tenerife. It's rather late, 1860s basically. Later the university gets its own space, so it moves away from here where it really stops, and this place is known as the Institute. Institute, which is equivalent of a secondary type of school. And it basically continues like that to about less than 12 years ago, when it closes its doors, because obviously their new installation, far more modern, and the rest of it that take over. But the place is full of students now, simply because they do visit this place tremendously. When you got them in secondary school and they're in that critical first year, in which they find that there's a difference from primary school in the days where they didn't have to really study to get into examination. Now they get to get that sort of habit that they didn't have before, and a new sort of way of understanding it. They obviously bring them to places like this and try and give them a contrast of how education used to be, which promises and how things are now. So it's nice. I mean, I like to hear those voices and see those figures around. Without them, this place looks absolutely dead. And now behind glasses there, but that's the part that used to be the Institute of Education. All the people of my generation that I know of La Laguna, I mean, I didn't live, I wasn't born in La Laguna. You only come to La Laguna when you get into university and so on. If you live here, you do your secondary school in places like this. And quite a number of friends I've got that actually came here, they do have a tremendous good sort of memories about this place and their years of experience. It's a huge big building, got this beautiful big sort of balconies, everything protected against the weather. So much so that if you observe here, most of the pillars, this one has been damaged, but you can see those little gaps on between the pillars, like this one here, where they used to have these woodworks that in the winter when the rain and the breeze was coming, they used to stick them between the pillars and protect the lower side of the rain coming in. Obviously on the side you've got that church that was burned, but, well, the Institute is tremendously large, and what I used to hear from some of my friends that studied here, they said the worst thing about this place is that you couldn't skip away from your classroom that easily, because it's Canary and pine, and the moment you put your weight in there, it squeaks and makes noises. That's the worst thing you had. I mean, it's like having a policeman on the door of every classroom. So it's the one thing that they all refer to. It's not the truth to get away with anything. By the way, we've got lots of clothes made of it, but have you ever seen the plant from New Zealand? one of the best sort of linen plants that exist. Look at the length of that. Those long leaves. You cut that up, you throw it into water, you warm it up, you give the pulp a bit of a treatment, and you keep on pulling the pulp, and from 3 or 4 of those leaves you got the equivalent to a huge big white horse tail sort of thing. Long white needles, tremendously strong. So an excellent linen. There's a couple of linen plants.
No, no.
Oranges in here, they're smaller than the ones in Valencia, but I'll tell you a secret. You get oranges from Valencia twice the size. So the local Canarian ones, obviously when they are mature, they're still green. You get 3 large Valencian oranges and 3 small Canarian oranges either side, and you start making a juice. And you get an extra quarter of a glass from the Canarian oranges and the Valencian ones. One of the main reasons is that the skin of the local orange is that thin, because it doesn't freeze, it doesn't protect itself against the weather that doesn't exist. The ones in Valencia, about more than a quarter of an inch of thickness. So they're a lot juicier, they're smaller but a lot juicier. We've got this lovely big tall elegant plant which is a yucca.
The top there.
Yucca plant, I mean, there are cultures like in South America that get the actual root from the yucca and make that sort of like type of flour which they have to rinse, wash and rinse constantly because of its toxicness, but they made a form of like yucca bread and things like that.
Can you see it? No, see it now, Paul. No.
Sí, yo le dije, mira, si algo se puede hacer, capitán, buen día, hasta luego. Si algo se puede hacer, imagínate, lo que sea con tiempo y lo que aparezca en el
We've got about 7 or 8 close churches in the Laguna. If there is sufficient economy. In Portugal, in some areas of Portugal, they created the habit of covering their balconies when autumn, winter and the cold weather came in order to gain that space to the rest of the house. So, touch windows. The year goes on, the winter goes past, spring arrives, we get rid of the such windows and you open your balcony to the weather and you recuperate it in the spring and summer to the open. That type of influence is the one that arrives to the Canary Islands with those labours that is paying contract from Portugal. Actually, the island of La Palma is got on the seafront, which is really the back side of the houses. They have their main front with some elegant big one single balcony over the front door into the main street, and on the rear looking over the sea, and mainly to keep that marine spray away, they got a large collection of these Portuguese closed balconies, even more than you will find in the whole of Portugal nowadays. I mean, the biggest collection of Portuguese closed balconies is in the Canary Islands, it's not in Portuguese territory. And this straightforward and simple construction is a Portuguese balcony. Now then, you get that balcony, you get rid of the windows because we've got a much milder climate and we haven't got snowfalls in the winter. It's good wood, a wood that really you feel like carving and doing jobs into it. So slowly you start applying your artistic knowledge into that And 200 years later, you've got this.
On the mountain tops of the island, on Thursday there was a tremendous amount of dust and suspension floating, and you could get a decent photograph of Teide if you just closed up a little bit more on it, because it was there. And the peculiar thing is that the weather was blowing in from the Sahara. But Sahara is on the eastern side of the island, and the weather is actually coming from the west. I mean, a bit of a mystery unless you are from here and you got your homework done. A bit further north of the islands, between here and the Strait of Gibraltar, which is about 600 miles away, Africa had one of these characteristic storms, and a lot of dust and suspension moved out into the Atlantic without affecting us at all in that given moment, because they went into the Atlantic a good couple of 100 miles north of the islands, and it didn't affect us. It started its journey across the Atlantic like they usually do towards the Caribbean, towards the Amazons and places like that, but then a big front coming down the Azores towards a nice big thick front, which is what we got right now on top of us. Yesterday entered La Palma. Yesterday was some drizzles and rains in La Palma, and today, between today and tomorrow, we're expecting in the evening a couple of showers, mainly in the mountains where the cloud gets gathered. In here, the front has just come into Tenerife today. Madeira, you could see it on the actual photographs of the satellite coming in from the western side. Trapped up that dust and suspension, brought it down the other way from the western side. Saturday the cable car in Teide stopped working because of the wind. Sunday apparently as well. Yesterday was a bit milder, but the breeze was still there. But things were a lot clearer, and we could start seeing the island of La Palma with its face clouds and so on. So it's coming in from the western side, it's brushing off to the east, and we look at what's happening here. But if you look on the right hand side of those clouds, you see some lovely little blue patches right through it. So at the moment we know one thing: if we start driving upwards past the 3,000 feet, we've got sunshine above these clouds. So we'll keep an eye on it, and there should be nothing to tell us that even if down here the weather gets a bit chillier like that and a bit fresh. I tell you something, I mean, you got air conditioning in your hotel, and obviously you're a lot better off than I am at home. But when you have a shower and you haven't finished drying yourself and you're already sticky again, that's more typical of the Caribbean than in the Canary Islands. And you have a couple of showers, once when you get back from work. 2 hours later you go back in the shower and just let a bit of cool water run over your body, dry up again. And 2 hours later you're going into bed, and you do the same thing to try and get into bed so the bed sheets don't stick to your body. And you've only got the one single bed sheet and you're kicking away, because I mean it's uncomfortable. It's something that in the age I've got in these islands, I can assure you, is absolutely abnormal. Humidity is the Caribbean, not the Canary Islands, and it's been like that. So the locals are absolutely grateful for this. The only people that are not happy with this weather right now are the ones that have got a few vineyards planted a bit further up. The electronic sort of card, key of your room that actually opens and closes doors like this. But you come out from the hotel, this peculiar hotel in which you enter on the top floor instead of the bottom one. You come down, and this is your hotel, by the way, on your left hand side right now, this building. You come under there, and these people here on this door on the right hand side are clients of your hotel. They are coming back, they get through there, they get the little staircase, go a little tunnel, catch the lift, and up it goes. Which is a lift? It's not the conventional one, it's a smaller one, no? Which is a lift, which timetables have you got, etc, etc, something that Anne will put you up to date with. You come down this little promenade here on the right hand side, this little walk, and as you see, the distance is rather short. You've got more clients of the anybody you see walking up and down this area, clients of the hotel. And you come down here. We'll turn left just a bit further on where traffic continues, but if you come walking, obviously from there on you continue the Marcianes Lake, the Lido, the Hotel Las Vegas. In front of the Hotel Las Vegas you even got the train that goes to the Loro Parque. All that from here, we're just walking along, pedestrian, and a stone's throw away. So it's all pedestrian. In fact, if you continue from there, you get to the Lido, you got San Telmo, there's a bit of works in there, getting the place a bit better, but the paths are open, and from there you go until you meet the traffic coming down again. In fact, we're going to be on that place a moment ago. So if you continue along, I'll show you exactly where you'll meet the traffic and where we continue our way down. The town hall, the fishing harbour, the main square by the fishing harbour with a large kiosk and most of the shops and so on down there. So you go up to the oldest part of Puerto La Cruz, all along the front, and avoiding traffic perfectly well most of the way. On your left hand side you got the commercial centre of Marcianes, the pyramids, got quite a few shops in there and so on. There's a longer way to come down from the hotel. When you come out of the hotel door, turn right and you walk until you find a large staircase that comes all the way down into here. There's another option, but obviously a bit longer, far more exercise. Right, and what we're going to do here is swing around to the right hand side and meet again that sort of pedestrian walk that you're supposed to continue down at the bottom of this little street, and we get the marina again. Awesome Telmo said they decided to repair and create a bit of a swimming area around there, which it did need a bit of a reparation, and they're on the work, so in the next 2 or 3 months is likely to be finished, and you see exactly what it is. They're widening up an excellent sort of view over the sea and the waves crashing and so on. You've got a couple of this coffee, tea, gatto sort of type of cafeterias and so on. The centre of the old town of Puerto La Cruz is just coming down below here. In fact, the church is around the corner from where we are. So imagine there where we turned off the avenue, you continue walking, you do the swimming pool next to the Lido, the whole front part, you go past the Hotel Las Vegas and the place where you catch up the train for the Loro Parque, you continue all that and you end up here on the right hand side. See, all along the front, pedestrian, you come all the way to here. There you got the rocky front of Puerto La Cruz. Continue, if you go to the left hand side, brings you down to the main square through shops and pedestrian again. If you decide to turn right down here on the right hand side, then you've got this part of the seafront where you got the town hall coming up on the corner with this balcony there. Yeah, a bit narrow. And it's not only as narrow, it's cobblestone streets, and cobblestones make the buses shake sidewise. And it's not so much driving forward, it's the bouncing and wobbling which can create problems. You'll lose a window easily with that. But he certainly knows what he's got in his hands. So here we have a square and the town hall, which is here on the right hand side. And the fishing harbours immediately after this. We've got some lovely old historical buildings like 1730 Casa Miranda right in front. Lovely couple of views with the nice photos of the sea crashing right down below there on the right. And this bit of a ride, again, quite a number of shops. So you can do this all in one go. Walking from the moment you leave the hotel until you arrive here, if you take it with the philosophy of someone that is on holiday, just strolling around and having a stop and a photo here and there, in something between 20 minutes and half an hour, you're in the area. There you got ice creams, shoe shops, you got a bit of everything, bazaars, watches, glasses, etc. And the little fishing harbour here on your right hand side. When the sea gets a bit tough, we just crane the boats out of the water and into on land, as you can see, but I mean, there you got a few. And the locals of this particular area, which they're swimming little beach, is this one, and they wouldn't change it for any other place. But a nice couple of local bars where you can have a tapa and so on, like that Kayaya, that yellow one there on the right hand side. If you're a bit more classic, then you got the frigate, nowadays called Agata. Oh no, La Fragata, it's actually that they're still called the frigate, but nowadays in the Spanish. A couple of bookshops in the area, the plaza or square with the main taxi rank. By the way, that noise in La Laguna was taxis. Apparently they're complaining with some problem they got with the licenses and with the town hall, they're reducing licenses or something like that. And there's a second big hooting around that they do. So this is a square and this is the whole part of Puerto. Well, we're driving out of it. Easily come around one of these bars on this street here for a little tapa of Roman fried style squids with a nice little beer or something like that. Shrimps and a glass of cold beer, and there's quite a few. This is where Puerto's got this little old atmosphere. The old fishing village where Puerto La Cruz used to be is between this and a couple of streets down to the right hand side. Obviously there's been lots of changes ever since, but the original Puerto actually started here. Now life has moved towards the direction that we left behind. Yeah? And what about me? So he's telling this car here in front to hold on because someone has got their, what I mean. Right, that's it. 2 out of the way. Yep. Puerto La Cruz local football team has got their local football pitch within this area. I mean that blue below, white above wall right in front of us. But out of all the places around here, my favorite is behind this building here on the left hand side. It's a white wall and it's literally called in Spanish La Chercha. You see that little white entrance tree on the corner? Right through there. La Chercha. La Chercha is the Spanish way of saying the church. Church. Simply because of a little chapel in what is known as a Protestant sort of cemetery. Anglican majority. But the only place where obviously those that weren't Roman Catholic could be buried. And as I said, it's the first of those installations here. So we come out of the old Puerto La Cruz into the new area where we got a combination of blocks of apartments for tourists, such as the Tenerife on the right, as well as the Valle Luz on the left. Some of them that were built up with the tourist boom in the late 60s, early 70s, and they were rather poor in the stars, and eventually they had basically nothing to offer anyone, and they become private boats, like these ones on the left hand side, or even these ones here on the right hand side. Very little tourism nowadays on them. The locals have been thrown out from the original fishing area because it's become more expensive, and you got from big buildings and so on, and you chuck them out of there. You give them 4 bob for their property and you throw them into a council house. I mean, it might have sounded rather aggressive, but that's exactly how it went. And a few of those council houses were created. We've got a nice sort of sports centre here on the right hand side. Lots of kids practicing quite a number of different sports. In fact, from here, from basketball to screamer, and quite a few other aspects of this. And that aspect is the healthy land of Puerto Cruz. A few blocks of apartments on the left hand side, and here on the right hand side you've got the so-called council houses. These ones and the ones further ahead. This is where we got most of the original population of Puerto Cruz now replaced in new areas. But anyway, little bits of squares. This secondary school a bit further out, and they've just been coming out. So lots of youth moving around. And I mean, the guy right in front of us there was smiling at us with that bottle of water under his chin. Unless you're really a local or tremendously fanatical about football, you're very unlikely to know who he is. But I know who he is, actually. I've seen him grow up. My sister lives about 4 houses away from where he grew up, and his parents live nowadays. As a kid, he was bought by the Barcelona and brought up there to the Masia, and nowadays Pedrito is known as Don Pedro in the Barcelona football team. That young lad in there obviously has gone from a very simple local family into a rather wealthy young man with a big expensive car. It's amazing what you can do kicking a ball around, which I've got not much against it, but I mean, the fortune that they get paid for kicking balls, I mean, I don't know anyone that can get that money for using their brain on something positive. By the way, talking about the rain, the doctors tell Stephen Hawking not to get into an aircraft under any means. So they get Stephen Hawking on a private cruise with 9 nurses, and he arrives in Tenerife. He's in the Obama hotel suites in the south part of the island. In Tenerife, Stephen Hopkins is to give a conference, and it's amazing, obviously, the amount of tremendous important people that settle down there. Been trying to get an entrance into that place, and you know what? No way. They don't even sell them. They're all through invitation. And in the next 20 years I might get to the proper level of being able to be invited for something like that, but at the moment I'm not. I mean, obviously, it's how many opportunities you have in life of assisting to a conference like that, where you got some of the biggest brains in the planet working together. And we have a hill on our right hand side. Actually, when I finish with you, I'll come back and go up to the top of the hill. I live up there. Actually, it was, no, you know how it was called? Now it's called Tauro Mountain, Tauro Hill, and it was called in 1860s, it was called the Hill of Misery. I found that name somewhere. In the Hill of Misery, they decided to build up a beautiful 5-star hotel, because in 1860s 4,000 people live in Puerto Cruz, and over 500 British tourists come to stay in Puerto Cruz. I'm talking about tourism in the 1860s, and that's the biggest overbooking this place has ever known. There wasn't enough place for all of them. So they built up a couple of hotels, and the Tauro There's this excellent 5-star hotel on the top of a hill. The place was basically privatized. The original exploitation of the place was Anglo-Spanish, put it that way, because the Tauro was done under the intentions of tourism by a company created mainly with the backing up of quite a number of doctors under the healthy intention of, you know, getting away from the climate in winter, asthma, tuberculosis and that sort of things, into a healthy climate here. No? So hotels and sanatoriums of the Rotondo Valley was, I think, the name on the top, like a big castle. Most of the gardens, once upon a time belonging to that, have been privatized. I mean, they've been made public. The town hall uses a great deal of people enjoying the place, which is absolutely lovely. It's the place where everyone comes hiking. The Puerto, Cruz, running around with the dogs and bicycles, and they're lovely and nice looking. But the hotel has got enough promises to keep on having, you know, a lovely place with a nice pool, beautiful gardens, and the rest of it. Churchill stayed there actually once his journey, I think, to India or somewhere like that. It's got quite a bit of history put together. And one last place I wanted to show you before the botanical gardens, here on the left hand side, down this little slope there, down at the bottom. There on the left I've got a photograph of Agatha Christie and another one of Alexander von Humboldt. 1728. Mr. John Little buys a bit of land and builds up a property in Puerto La Cruz. It's got to do with, you know, he's a merchantman. It's got to do with the shipping of those days. Orchid, the first orchid garden created here is actually in that place and there. And I've got obviously copies. I mean, if I had the originals, there'll be somebody else guiding for you today. I've got a few lovely copies at home in the corridor of Marian's North dragon trees in Tenerife. She was here for a few months. The thing is, the time has gone, time has passed, but you sit in the same places. No, sigue para arriba, hacia el botánico. Bueno, vamos para el botánico. Entra por aquí, no tienes que dar la vuelta. Porque no puedes pasar subiendo la calle. Si entra por aquí. That beautiful botanical painter, well, in Kew Gardens you got the actual originals of the ones I've got the copy of them. Places where she sat and the places where she painted those dragon trees. Time was gone, the dragons got a bit bigger, but you can still recognize them. The wall behind it, the landscape at the end, a tremendous amount of constructions that went on those days, but you get a photograph from that same place and put it next to the picture, you can see perfectly well the before and after that story. Alexander von Humboldt visits Tenerife, is actually invited to the place for a meal and so on. And there's an anecdote or two of his visit. And Agatha Christie comes to Tenerife on holiday, immediately divorced, with a daughter. And she actually sits down, and one of the good sort of edition, one of her excellent books, Goodbye Mr. Bing, something like that I think was the title, was actually written in her stay around here. In fact, not far from where your hotel is, we got a little alleyway, Agatha Christie's alleyway, and in the square a bit further on, you got actually a little monument to the lady. Right, swinging round and heading towards the botanical. Once upon a time, acclimatizing gardens, nowadays botanical gardens. Right in front. Once upon a time, the actual entrance was on the main road, but obviously in that main road in those days, there was a cart pulled pulled by a couple of mules or a horse or two, and it's become so dangerous with the traffic that they decided to lock that door up there on the right hand side on the main road and open a new one from down here, which was clever. They bought a bit of land on the upper part and they already got a wall round it, but at the moment there's nothing happening in there, because then again, this country, economically speaking, is in ruins, so they're waiting for money to arrive. And when the money comes, the botanical gardens would enlarge themselves in nearly an extra third of space. Here it is, the entrance is here on the right hand side. Climatizing Gardens of Lauderdale, still not the classic name.
No, baja por aquí porque es conveniente que vean esto. Sí, estamos intentando decirles por dónde tienen que venir.
Right, Botanical Gardens are nearly on the front door. There's a street that goes all the way down. Straight and not that long. By the time we get down to that street, we are on the street just above, parallel but just above the one where you got your hotels. To come out of the front door, turn right, first left, then right and then left. Right, left, and all the way up here. See you exactly what we're doing. Teide is the name of a big volcano up there. Mar, M-A-R is sea, so Teide Sea would be the name of this block of apartments on the right hand side, which is what you'll see right in front of you the moment you turn around the corner from the hotel as you come up to this side street. Remember the bits and pieces, and we'll sit down with you for a couple of minutes and put you up to it. Normally a smaller vehicle will usually up and up and swing around here. We might be able to do it. It doesn't seem too busy with cars in there, although there's this one. But if we miss it, we'll be able to correct after it. Yeah, we're making it. Okay, so we're back to the hotel. Bernardo, I'd like to thank him for, going a bit out of his way and swinging around and doing these corners, but the principle of it is to do a good, decent job, and I mean, La Laguna sorted out. I hope you enjoyed that sort of walk about La Laguna and what we managed to learn about it. Enjoy yourselves, make the best of your stay among us, make sure you got everything at hand before you get off the bus, and we have a date on Thursday morning.